This is Alan from Moorvale Community Church. We are in a series of messages on the will of God, and in that particular part of the will of God, we are working on the messages concerning freedom. And this is freedoms that we must control. See, within the will of God, freedoms, rights, and liberties play a large role in future blessings and reward. And part of this is that we need to stay qualified in serving by limiting our freedoms. This is a modified quote. Some aspects of freedom are like sin. It will take you farther than you ever thought you'd go. It will keep you there longer than you ever intended to stay, and it will cost you more than you ever expected to pay. Also, in relationship to this, there is much pressure related to the exercise of our freedoms. If we look in this section, in this particular verse, in 1 Corinthians 10, verse 13, it says, "No temptation has overtaken you, but as such is common to man, and God is faithful, who will not allow you to be tempted beyond what you are able, but with the temptation will provide the way of escape also, so that you will be able to endure it." Now, it's interesting that this is often taken out of its context, but the context here is about dealing with our rights and freedoms and liberties and the pressures that go along with them. So some rights and freedoms are good for all. Others could cause others to stumble. Even others can cause you to stumble. All categories of freedom are not the same, nor have the same level of danger. And we need to realize, and this is where Paul addresses it in 1 Corinthians 9 and 10. But if we want to make sure that we are participating to the max that will lead to reward, then we need to keep these areas in focus. And if you misuse your freedoms and rights, these can endanger your partnership in the gospel and cause you to suffer loss, even though you are saved through fire, as it talks about in the area of reward in chapter 3. Controlling freedoms to such a level that you don't cause this disqualification. You can't be a fellow partaker if your freedoms lead you to disqualification. And this is how this section is talked about. We start in 1 Corinthians chapter 9 and verse 23. This is talking about partnering in the gospel. 1 Corinthians 9:23 says, "I do all things for the sake of the gospel, so that I may become a fellow partaker of it." Paul shapes his interaction with people in an evangelistic way. To the Jews, he became a Jew. Those under the law and those not under the law. And to those who are weak, he adjusted his freedom to win those people. Paul used his free time, and we've already talked about that, to work instead of being paid to win the more. He wanted to share with those who believe the gospel by becoming all things to all men. The gospel means or way lets him become a sharer in people being saved. In some aspects, I may not become a close sharer of people being saved if I always keep my freedoms and rights prominent. Controlling freedoms are the way to stay in this partnership. The meaning of being a partner in the gospel is tied to not being disqualified, as verse 27 talks about. If he is disqualified, then he is not a fellow partaker of its fruit in the same way. This is not talking about his salvation, his participation in the gospel in the saving sense. It's participation in other aspects of the gospel. And so to stay qualified, we must exercise self-control in the area of freedoms. And to become all things for the sake of the gospel so he can participate in the gospel ministry. Similar to this is in 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 10. "For this reason I endure all things for the sake of those who are chosen, so that they also may obtain the salvation which is in Christ Jesus, and with it eternal glory." So it goes on back to 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 24. This is talking about running the race to win. So staying in this partnership, not becoming disqualified, it talks about running the race to win. And 1 Corinthians 9:24 says this, Do you not know that those who run in a race all run, but only one receives the prize? Run in such a way that you may win. The common awareness is that in a race of that time, all run, but only one received the prize. It'd be like we only have a gold medal, no silver or bronze. There's no runner-up. In that particular time, it was a winner take all. Running is a type of event that requires also full exertion to participate. We all are in a race, but there's no people in the stands. It's not running in a performance in the same sense. Angels are looking and other things are happening, but it's really not that kind of a race. On one hand, all run, but on the other hand, only one receives the prize. With this style of running, we are to run in such a way as to win. A wrong focus on freedoms, rights, and liberties will not create a winning of the race. The winning of a prize mindset helps us to shape the use of our freedom. I am taking all my freedoms to gain more, and that is far better. That's kind of what Paul communicates. Some rights and freedoms must be controlled to be a winner. The running is the way you participate in the gospel. Talks about in Ephesians chapter 3, verse 14 about pressing hard toward the prize. It says, I press on toward the goal for the prize of the upward call of God in Christ Jesus. Another verse on running is Hebrews chapter 12, verse 1. This is talking about running the race with endurance. Therefore, since we have so great a cloud of witnesses surrounding us, let us also lay aside every encumbrance and the sin which so easily entangles us, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us. See, the sin that entangles is one area, and the encumbrance is another. The freedoms, rights, and liberties are in the area of encumbrances and hindrances. Some freedoms are weighty and burdensome and should be laid aside. The bulky things are not sin in itself, but things that weigh you down and resist your running. And so we want to run in such a way with endurance and not be weighed down. Another verse on running is Philippians chapter 2, verse 16. And this is a type of running so we don't run in vain. Philippians 2:16, not holding fast the word of life, so that in the day of Christ I will have reason to glory, because I did not run in vain nor toil in vain. Here he's talking about his service, his toil, his labor, all in the same area of running. And we must hold fast the word of life to not run in vain. And we want to make sure that we're making striving effort in the direction that it's not empty. So we can look back at 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 25. Here it talks about exercising self-control to receive reward. Verse 25, everyone who competes in the games exercises self-control in all things. They do it to receive a perishable wreath, but we an imperishable. The prize that we are looking is imperishable. We exercise self-control to gain this imperishable prize. The word wreath is the same word translated crown, which is a reward kind of word. It was a symbol of distinction. Their motivation is to attain a pine shrub with earthly fame and acclaim. But we have a different reasons. So those compete in the game of track and field to do this to obtain something that would not last. But we control our desires related to the area of freedom so that we will win. And these are the rules. And that really comes from 2 Timothy 2, verse 5. It says there, also, if anyone competes as an athlete, he does not win unless he competes according to the rules. So there's no winning without competing according to the rules. This is being devoted to edifying and deterring from hurtfulness. Our motivation should be greater because the prize is lasting. The prize of winning should mold the training of our affections. We exercise self-control and liberties so we don't become disqualified in service. If a person can't handle, say for instance, the state of being single, this is talking about self-control, then it says if they can't exercise self-control, they should marry. That's in chapter 7, verse 9. And this is the word about exercising self-control, the idea of making decisions. Even with the area of the freedom of being single, You need to, if you can't exercise control, then you need to get married. And it's also talking about these wreaths, or we see that the same word as crown. Let's look at James chapter 1, verse 12. This one is talking about the crown of life if you are successful through trials. James 1:12, blessed is a man who perseveres under trial, for once he has been approved, he will receive the crown of life, which the Lord has promised to those who love him. There is a crown of righteousness for those who finish the race. 2 Timothy chapter 4, starting at verse 7. It says, I have fought the good fight. I have finished the course. I have kept the faith. Verse 8, in the future there is laid up for me the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will award me on that day. And not only me, but also all who have loved his appearing. Here it talks about finishing the race, fighting the good fight, and all of these aspects lead to the crown, which is of righteousness. Remember, this is just a display of distinction that is given. There's also a crown given by the chief shepherd, and that's in 1 Peter chapter 4, 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 4. And when the chief shepherd appears, you will receive the unfading crown of glory. Also, there's a warning about crowns in Revelation 3:11. It says, I am coming quickly, hold fast to what you have, so that no one will take your crown. So your crown can be taken by you not holding fast. And so in some aspects, these rewards or the anticipation of rewards can be taken while in this life. Also, it talks about the whole aspect of self-control. This is the qualification for an elder. Elder needs to exercise this control, determination to control his liberties and choices. This is in Titus chapter 1, verse 8, but hospitable, loving what is good, sensible, just, devout, self-control. So we see those are various aspects about the ideal of reward, and we have to compete according to the rules. We have to compete with self-control and realize that we are inheriting a imperishable reward. Now look at back to 1 Corinthians 9 to verse 26. This is talking about running with aim and winning purpose. It says, therefore I run in such a way as not without aim. I box in such a way as not beating the air. This style of running is not without certainty. There is a goal to running which harnesses freedoms that would distract or disqualify. He does not waste his swings, but strikes hard on a target. He does not strike in a terrifying blow only into the air, which is a meaningless gesture. Also brought out the idea of speaking into the air for 1 Corinthians 14:9. So our free time is not for laziness, but rather to win by making good choices. So we've gone through half of this section talking about the idea of controlling or limiting our freedoms for the purpose of not becoming disqualified and allowed to participate in the gospel.